Right. Okay, we are officially live. Okay, I'm just gonna Instagram story real quick. I don't know if you want to do that, but I figured I would.
Sitting here.
All right, guys, we are live and ready to do our live stream. I did put the link also in my profile if you want to hop on and watch Kate and I chat all about Rebecca by Daphne Du Maurier.
Okay, I will do mine now.
Okay.
Hey, Bookstagram, we're about to go live on YouTube to talk about Daphne Du Maurier's Rebecca. So go check out the link in my profile to come watch us chat. All right, talk to you soon. Bye, guys. Hey, Bookstagram. Oh, we have a viewer. Wait, can they comment on this one? Like on
Yeah, we did. What did you say, Kate?
I said we have a viewer. Can people leave comments on here like they can with
I think so.
Oh, there is. There's a chat.
A group chat. Yeah. So if they want to send us questions and stuff, they can. Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and get started. So welcome, guys. We're super excited. This is a new project that Kate and I have been talking about concept-wise for a bit, and now we're kind of excited to start it and get it going and see where this whole thing takes us. Yeah. Do you want to say hi, Kate?
Hi. Don't laugh at me.
I know.
I can't help it if I sound like Minnie Mouse.
Okay, so a little bit about what this is. This is obviously Is This Classic Lit? And this is basically going to be a monthly chat that Kate and I are going to do. And we just want to say welcome to our first live stream. This is a monthly discussion where we read one classic novel and then we're going to share our thoughts on it. It's not your typical English 101 class. It's just a unique way to expand our knowledge on all of those books that have been listed as a classic and are part of the classic canon. And so today we're going to be talking about Rebecca by Daphne Du Maurier, which is a best-selling romantic suspense novel. And we can talk about a little later if we think romantic suspense is the right description for that novel. And it was published in 1938, and it's been in publication ever since. And it sold almost 3 million copies, which is insane, absolutely insane. Yeah, so before we get started with the chat, we thought we'd talk a little bit about the concept. So, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about it, but do you want to say anything about working on the concept, Kate?
The concept of Is This Classic Lit?
Yeah, yep.
It was just I think a fun way for us to the classic lit. I feel like as social media influences, there's all this pressure to be up on what the new book is, what the new front list is. And as readers, that's not the reason why we actually probably started our Bookstagram and our social media and our blog. Is really to expand our knowledge about books and reading, and classic literature has a place in that. And so just exploring classic literature and trying to fit it into our modern reading lives.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other thing, I remember talking about this with you, is that when we think classic lit, we typically think of sitting in, you know, some type of either your high school classes or a college course, whether it was English 101 or if you're an English major, like Hemingway, or I think I took a whole semester on Robert Frost. And it's just like a fun way to just get out of that academic mindset when you're reading, you know, really important pieces of literature and just talk about them naturally and just give your honest opinion on whether you liked it or not and what you thought about it, rather than writing like a 4-page thesis on, like, you know, social issues in a Jane Austen novel.
What
Um,
about the color purple influences the writer on pages 105 to 110? And you're
yeah,
like, why?
the
No
green
one
light
cares.
at the end of Daisy's dock in The Great Gatsby is a symbol of hope. I still remember that one from my high school English class because when I heard that, I was like, what?
And the omnipotent eye of Dr. Oh my god, I can't remember his name.
Yes, yes, the all-seeing eye. Oh my God,
The eye.
watching over everything.
Ooh.
Yeah,
So
so I mean, I'm sure we'll have some like in-depth thoughts on things, but um, don't worry, we're not going to pull out all the fancy literary terms and analysis for these books. We're just here to have fun and talk about some of these great novels that we adore and maybe not adore so much. Um, so obviously we are talking about Rebecca, and I went ahead and looked up a little bit about the background of the book and anything interesting that happened with it. And obviously Rebecca is still in print. It sells like I guess like 4,000 books a month are sold of Rebecca every month. I couldn't believe it.
that's crazy. I wonder if it's because now it's so accessible. Like I have a copy of mine, but then I also bought it on Kindle, and it's like $3, and it's so much easier to just like read it on my Kindle versus carrying a book around.
Yeah. I mean, I went to Barnes and Noble a couple weeks ago and got my copy, and like they had three different editions there, and I went with like this chintzy like Harlequin romance looking one. That's perfection, complete perfection. And it's just like it's just crazy how much like it still sells, and like people being so incredibly obsessed with it, because when you talk to people that have read Rebecca, pretty much everyone I know is obsessed with it. And they're just like, oh my God, you're going to read Rebecca. That's so exciting. Yeah. And then the other thing that I found out that was really interesting about Rebecca is that, well, let me backtrack. Let me backtrack. Um, I did look up to see what the Goodreads rating was, and it has over 300,000 ratings on it, which is intense.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the average rating is 4.21. So this is also a really highly rated book on Goodreads.
Wow.
I feel like if you have a rating that's like 4 and above, that's like high ratings. And then like 3.7 to like 3.9 is kind of like, yeah, it's pretty good. And then like 3 to 3.5 is iffy. And then if it's under 3, it's crap. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's just people being kind at that point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So yeah, so I couldn't believe how highly rated it was on Goodreads. And then maybe because of my own opinion, but um and then the other thing that I thought was really interesting about Rebecca is that it was actually used as a key to a code. The Germans used it in World War II for coding, and then Ken Follett, who wrote like Pillars of the Earth and I can't remember the other series he wrote. I wrote Pillars of the Earth, but he wrote this book called The Key to Rebecca, and he used that instance of the German soldiers using this as a key for his book that he wrote, which I thought was really cool.
That does sound really cool. I haven't read Ken Follett. I feel like I should, but I look at the book and it's just like it's so big.
Yeah, literally, you could hurt someone with one of his books. And they're all that way. Like he has this like I think it's like the Winter Trilogy or something like that, and it's set in like World War II, and then I think maybe the Cold War and stuff. And those books are just as thick. Like I don't think he knows how to write a short novel. So, but Pillars of the Earth is so good. But that's a discussion for another day, I guess. Um so yeah, so Rebecca is just kind of like this interesting book that's out there that's so widely loved by people. But Kate, you were looking up some interesting stuff about Daphne Du Maurier. What did you find?
Yes. So I found out a lot about her personal life because that was the thing that interested me the most. I found out she was born in 1907 in May. She's a May baby, just like me. And she was born to actor parents. So she had this very like bohemian lifestyle. Her parents didn't really believe in fidelity. They were both like cheating on each other all the time. So it set up a very tumultuous, I guess, childhood. And she didn't really have positive relationship influences from what I can tell. And as a child growing up, the way she described herself was being a boy in her mind and in her heart. And I thought that was really interesting because she didn't feel like a girl. She didn't feel like she belonged in her own body. And there was a point where she was wearing shorts and ties, and she had an alter ego, and his name was Eric Avon, and he like played rugby, and she made up this whole alternate persona for herself. And then later on, as she got older, she said that as a person, she had two personas. She had her female person she was, and then her writer self was a man. And I thought that was really interesting. Like she's writing from, or thinking about writing and writing from the perspective of a man, which I think thinking about it, going back to the book, I could see that a little bit more in the characters that she created. And she never really felt ultra feminine, even though she was married. She did have 3 children. She married an army officer, but she never really felt female. And I think just starting off the conversation about our main character, whose name we do not know, having that sort of like mousy, and our main character is constantly hating on herself. She's like, my hair is limp, my body's not that great, I'm always biting my nails. Like she is creating this persona where she doesn't feel ultra feminine. And I think that was really interesting to see that in her personal life. So there's a little bit of her in our main character.
Yeah, and I think, because I remember reading an article that was all about Daphne Du Maurier, them saying that it was like one of the first like times they had seen an author or somebody just document basically the fact that they were transgendered.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was one of the first ones to kind of talk about that. So that was really cool. So let's talk a little bit about what Rebecca is all about for those that have not read it yet. To me, the plot and the gist of the story is that we follow this girl who, like Kate says, is completely unnamed throughout the entire novel. I felt like I was going crazy at times because I was like, what is this chick's name? Did I miss it on the page? What did I do?
Who are you?
Right? And we follow her. She is a companion, an orphaned, and she's a companion to a woman named Mrs. Van Hopper, who is very annoying. And while she's on vacation in Monte Carlo, she meets this guy named Max de Winter, and she becomes infatuated with him, and they ultimately get married, and he takes her back to this place called Manderley, which everyone seems to not be able to stop talking about. And when they get there, she's just haunted by the presence of the first Mrs. De Winter, who is Rebecca, and weird stuff just starts happening, and she tries to piece together what happened to her because obviously Rebecca is no more. So you feel like that's a good assessment of what the book's about?
Yep.
A solid, non-spoiler synopsis right there.
Oh, we never talked about that. Are we going to give spoilers or are we not going to give spoilers?
I figured probably not, because I'm sure that if we did say, like, oh, this is what happened, and people didn't realize that was going to happen in the podcast, I'm sorry, the live.
I don't know. There's so many, like, plot points, like, especially, like, the end that really bugged me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm totally fine with it. So,
Okay. You guys watching, spoilers or no spoilers, send us a chat, please.
yeah,
Thanks.
for sure. So
The name
let
thing. Let's start with the name thing.
yeah, you want to start with the name thing, the lack of the name thing, or the fact that we really read a book that was not about the lack of the name thing?
Well, okay. So I'm not a big fan of first person point of view. I think that I when I read a book that's first person point of view, I'm getting tongue tied. I don't trust the main character because I'm only in their head. And I feel like there's so many other outside forces going on in a story. So immediately I'm like, telling me first person, I can't say the word person, like going poison, like a 5-year-old. Um, I immediately don't trust them. And then to top it off, she doesn't have a name. Like she and it just sort of set the tone for her as a character and sort of I guess undermining her importance a little bit for me. Like you're so low that I'm not even going to give you a name.
Right. And I think part of that, I appreciated it to a certain extent because it felt like it was a good device to use by not naming her. We quickly realized that the story is really not about the second Mrs. De Winter. It's really about what happened to the first one. This isn't about, well, it's not a love story in my opinion, but whatever. It's not about the unnamed girl in this book. It's all about Rebecca. The whole thing is about Rebecca. So by not doing that, I think it just put more emphasis on the wife who was gone. And I could appreciate that to a certain extent. I think what bugged me more with our unnamed protagonist was her lack of motivation in the book. I've read books where you feel like characters don't really do anything and that they just kind of sit passively and let everything happen to them. And it can be a tiny bit aggravating, but I've never been so aggravated by a main character in my life. Like hating on herself and like bemoaning her situation with Mrs. Van Hopper and then just completely becoming so totally infatuated with a guy who you could clearly tell from 10 miles off was, there was something clearly not right about him. And then just deciding that, yes, she would marry him. So I think I got stuck at the beginning. And I think that you guys can probably clearly tell by now that Rebecca was not our favorite.
No.
I just really could not find myself getting behind the fact that our main protagonist was naive, ignorant, idiotic at points. It drove me bananas. I would have rather had like a smart heroine who was like in the thick of things, like with crazy stuff happening to her.
So would you rather have been written from Rebecca's point of view?
No, because Rebecca's horrible. Like, here's the thing. The way I was thinking about this, honestly, they're all horrible. Like, this is definitely one of those books where, like, if you don't like having characters who are not good people, I don't think you would like this book at all. But something in my brain clicked that as I was reading/listening to this, it kept drawing me back to Gone Girl. Like that's what I kept thinking about. And it's not that the like plot or anything is necessarily the same, but it's that idea of like all these twists happening in the book and you like slowly realizing throughout the whole novel that like these people are not good people. And I think that it's the same device used in both of these books.
It's funny because as I was researching Daphne Du Maurier, there was an article, I think it was like her New York Times obituary, and she was having there's a quote where someone is describing Rebecca as, oh, it's a boy meets girl scenario. And she was like, no, it's a ghoul meets goon scenario. And I was like, what?
Isn't
that great?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, oh, you, yeah. So like that whole romance thing, I don't know, it pulled me right out of it.
Yeah. And I think like, so let's talk about that for a little bit. Let's talk about the fact, and I know for a fact because here's my chintzy um romance version of this, which I totally think is misleading marketing, which could be a whole nother discussion for another day. Is that how
No, I know, it looks like a
they're
romance.
totally mismarketed? Um, and I also think that could go into part of the reason why I didn't fully enjoy this
Mm-hmm.
was because, okay, now I can't find it. I know it said it somewhere. Called it romantic suspense. And I was like, but is this romance? And I guess that's like my question. Like, yes, I think this was mismarketed as romantic suspense. But did you feel like there was an actual romance in this novel?
No, and I think that sort of harkens to when you get to the end of the book and Max goes through his whole spiel about being honest with our mystery lady. I don't know what to call her mystery lady. And then that's when he tells her he loves her. So I feel like there's no courtship. Like in a true romance novel, you have boy meets girl, and then they start to court, and you don't see that with them. It's like, yes, they go for drives. He gives her a book of poetry that his dead wife gave him, which was totally weird. Like, oh, here's the thing that my dead wife gave me. I'm gonna give it to you. Like, there's no true courtship, and we don't really see them romantically or fall in love at all.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that the way they describe any type of physicality between the two of them, like he puts his arm around her and kisses her on the forehead, which seems very paternal to me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a section where he literally says that he could be her father. And I don't
Also,
have, what were you gonna
sorry.
say? No, go ahead.
Oh, there's at the beginning when she first goes to Manderley, there's a part where they're sitting together and he's like petting her, and she's like, "This is how he pets the dog." You know what I mean? Like she doesn't feel like a woman, and she always describes herself like, "Oh, I can just be your companion like a boy." Like she's
Yes, the
like,
schoolboy analogies that she uses. Yes. So, like when I think to myself about like a good like classic romance, like I think of Jane Austen and the tension that she builds, and it's not physical. It's all conversation and like a look like in their eyes or perhaps like, like hands brushing against each other or something. Like she still is able to like build that really well until the point you're like, are they going to get together or not? And this for me, I was just like, what is going on?
it's
Like,
like
I'm pretty sure this like 12-year-old schoolboy is falling for this guy. And I mean, okay, if he was a boy and he was falling for him, fine. But like, it was just like, it was so weird. Like, it was just so weird the way it was done. The like, describing De Winter as being a paternal figure essentially for her, it was just so off-putting. And I think, again, if I hadn't gone into the book with the expectation that it was a romantic suspense novel, it wouldn't have bothered me. But I was like, why are people calling this a romance? Like this is not what I would consider a romantic relationship to be like.
And I wonder if that's partly put on by critics of the day. Like when I was doing historical research, they were like, critics were putting her in this romance category and putting her down as she was writing it. So I'm wondering if this was, I don't think her intention was for this to be a romance at all. I think it's what society placed her in because she is a woman. Like, you're a woman in this era, you must be writing romance. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. And that might have been a really good way to like market and sell the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is such a pity now because I really think it should be reclassified in some way. I'd be interested to see like a film adaptation of this because I could like hedge my bets that I actually would think like watching it like film-wise with someone kind of recreating and thinking about what Du Maurier wanted to do with it and just kind of transforming it would probably work really well, I think.
Well, it is a movie. I forget when it came out, but there is a movie. Maybe we should watch it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, like, don't you think, like, 2018 mindset would be really interesting with this one? Like, I'm just thinking, like, did you ever watch and now I can't remember when it came out. It wasn't Carey Mulligan who was in it. It was the latest adaptation of Jane Eyre. And I
Oh, Mia Wasikowski. I can't remember.
yes, I think you're
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
well,
what were you gonna say?
Funny enough, like so many people compare this book to Jane Eyre, and like, and I just like I love Jane Eyre. I love Jane Eyre, and I just felt like to compare this to that, like the suspense just wasn't there. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, big shock in Jane Eyre does not like what happens in Rebecca doesn't hold a candle to what happens in Jane Eyre, because really in Jane Eyre, like, yeah, there's some eerie things going on, but when you finally discover like the big monumental twist, I almost feel like it knocks you sideways. You just don't see it coming.
Right, because I think in there's more clues and more things for you to go, something weird is happening here.
Right.
I feel like in Rebecca, you're like reading along and you're like, oh, Mrs. Danvers is weird. She does these horrible things. And then you're kind of like, okay. And then when the reveal happens, the shocking moment, you're kind of like, oh, all right. Because I don't think that we see enough subtle hints about who Rebecca is as a person throughout the novel, because she's built up in our main character's head as this ultra feminine, ultra social, very aware, very outgoing person who had this loving relationship with Mr. De Winter. Mm-hmm. And that's what they keep hammering and keep hammering, keep hammering. And then when they do the reveal, it's kind of like, well, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is that really the like suspense devices that are used, in my opinion, and maybe it was just coming in and knowing so much about Rebecca, didn't really feel that suspenseful, because you kind of just were like, you knew something was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything just felt a little bit too obvious and heavy-handed. Like obviously Mrs. Danvers wasn't her friend, and obviously there was something bizarre going on with Max. And really I feel like part of the suspense was built up with just like her constant obsession with Rebecca. And like maybe that's really like the true love story there, is that the second Mrs. De Winter was just so incredibly obsessed with who Rebecca was, and spending like copious amounts of time imagining what she was like, what she looked like what certain situations would have played out as and stuff. And I don't know if that as a device, again, really worked for me. Like her always like imagining what's happening. Like I wanted action that actually happened, not like, what do you think would have happened?
I think that for me, if she had tried to actually step into that role, it would have been much more interesting.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I feel like Mrs. Danvers is always like, oh, you're just trying to fill her shoes. You're just trying to fill her shoes. And she's like, no, I'm just passively existing in this world that clearly no one wants me in. Versus if she had like literally stepped into her slipper and like put on her clothes intentionally and did her hair and tried to do those things, it would have been much more interesting and tension filled.
Yes. And like there had been ramifications from her like trying to do that, like some kind of foreboding, like if you keep it up, like there are these certain ramifications that come with it. Yes, I agree. And here's another question, because I think it's interesting the way the whole book begins, because we begin the book in the after state of just everything unraveling and coming undone. So we know that, you know, disaster has happened here for our unnamed protagonist and Max, and they're kind of hiding out and, you know, on the down low at some random hotel. And we probably get like a good like 2 to 3 chapters of that before we even get into like the plot taking us through like the whole story of what actually happened. So what did you think about that?
I was completely bored with it.
Yeah.
It was just like pages and pages of description. I was just kind of like, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me? But I think there was a couple of really great things in those few in those chapters, because she has a lot of great quotes about love in there, which I thought was really interesting, that I know like I highlighted.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find them. Should have been more prepared. But she had like a lot of great stuff like in those few chapters, like addressing love and what it's like to be in a relationship. So the setup was really boring for me, but I had hope based upon the ideas she was putting in those pages. But then when it came time to write them into the story, it completely fell flat.
I almost wish, so this is kind of what I thought, because I really think that the way the book began was also a huge hang up for me. I really felt like that part shouldn't have even existed. I really felt like we needed the book to pick up quicker and just start right with her being in Monte Carlo and being swept up. However, what I would have welcomed with that is if it had been told from the perspective, like still in first person, but from her adult perspective, telling the narrative and like kind of giving these like little asides about had she known what she'd know now kind of thing to like keep it going. So just like sharing a little bit with us, because really for me, I felt like knowing that the disaster, there was disaster and disaster had already happened for them was kind of like, oh, so like I kind of know that this isn't going to end well. Which, I mean, with any mystery, you kind of know that there's going to be some type of tragedy in it. But I think I'd rather have the build up with not knowing than to have it told to me within the first 7 pages that, yeah, actually something bad really did happen and now we're like on the run. So, I just wish it didn't exist. I think she could have done some other things with starting off the book that would have been better and more compelling with it. But I'm sorry, I have a cold still, apparently, so I'm still coughing here and there. I guess, did you have any characters that you actually liked in the book?
No, not really. Like, not major characters. Like, I thought all of them could have been so much more interesting. Like, I feel like they were all on the cusp of being interesting, but not like ever quite making it over the ledge. I did feel really bad for Ben.
Oh yeah, Ben.
I just felt so bad for him.
Didn't want to go to the asylum.
He was tortured by Rebecca and like threatened and made to feel unsafe in his own home in a way. So I felt really bad for him. I didn't really love anybody. There was no one who captured me or I felt like I wanted to follow their story more. Do you know, sometimes when you finish a book and it's a standalone and you're like, I wish there was a second one or a third one. For this, it was kind of like, okay, I'm glad this is done. I never want to see or hear or talk to these people ever again. Like, you go to a bad party and you don't, like, someone gives you their business card, but you're like, no, I'm not going to call you.
I had to be honest, I don't think I've ever been to a party where someone hands me a business card. So that shows you how much I get out. I did think long and hard about this and like made myself like go into this question being like, Katie, you have to pick somebody. Like one person. You have to pick one person that you liked from this.
Mm-hmm.
And legitimately, my favorite character was Mrs. Van Hopper. No joke. Like, at least, like, she was annoying. She
Mm-hmm.
had no couth. And she just was like this grumpy old lady, but she lived her truth. And she just did what she had to do at Monty and just lived her life the way she wanted to. Running here, running there, bossing that little companion girl around. I was just like, you know what? I give it to Mrs. Van Hopper because she's at least not like a menacing manipulator or like a terrible person who's got like moral dilemmas on their hands for the rest of their life, or a girl who doesn't know how to speak up for herself or do anything. So Mrs. Van Hopper wins it for me.
She did call it. She was like, you're going to regret this decision.
Yeah. Yep. Mrs. Van Hopper, she is a queen. She knows. She knows.
Yeah.
So, what were you going to say, Kate?
I was just thinking about, like, I don't even understand how she was like, Max de Winter is so dreamy. I love him so much. Anyway. Sorry.
He literally laughed at her. He would say something and he would laugh.
Yeah.
And ridicule her. Like, if someone did that to me, I'd be like, nuh-uh, bro. Excuse me. You can go away now.
Yeah.
Okay. It's
That's
just.
why you have to read A Princess in Theory. Anyway.
Ugh. Don't even.
Did you pick it up yet?
No.
You need to.
There hasn't been time. Okay. So I think the last question for me was there any part of this book that did work for you?
I think that even though Rebecca was a horrible human being, there was some really great points about her rebelling against her traditional role, which I thought was really nice. But the overall, you know what it is? I really like the idea of the book. Like, I love the plot. I just hated the execution. Like, I feel like there was a better way this could have been done.
Mm-hmm. I literally, that is my exact same answer. I think the concept of the book is great.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. I think the more I think about it, I love the idea of, other than the fact that like Rebecca really was a horrible person, I also love the fact that she didn't transcribe to traditional ideas about her role as a woman in a traditional marriage. And so I think based on like when Du Maurier was writing this, that she probably was living out in some ways, what would this look like if a woman lived like this? Like, how would she be treated? And obviously we find out in the end that it obviously doesn't work out too well for Rebecca. And to, kind of use the unnamed narrator as a foil for that was, I think, a really good idea. But again, I completely agree with you. I think the concept is really good. I just kind of found the execution lacking. And I mean, I get it. She's British, but it was almost too, the writing was almost too pious for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there was no passion about it. And now that you said, like, we talk about Rebecca versus like the second Mrs. De Winter, maybe that was her catharsis, like her trying to figure out, I am these two people. If I take this path, I'm going to end up this way. But if I take this path, I'm going to end up that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like, and like obviously our unnamed protagonist like is like morally right. I mean, she really doesn't do anything wrong. She just like puts herself in a bad situation.
Being a bystander.
That's true.
I don't think being a bystander is moral at all. I think she is an accessory to what happens.
And that's true. And that's what, like, when we finally figure out the big twist of like what happens to Rebecca, I just find it hard to believe that, well, I say this, I don't want to be accusing, like really after that, it really shut me off because I was like, are we supposed to feel, okay that this happened and feel that it's a totally justifiable incident? Because I really felt like it's obviously not okay. Like there's really no like gray space for me. I think it was completely wrong, no matter like how horrible Rebecca was.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think like if I was his wife, would my immediate reaction be like, "Oh, it's okay. I'm okay with this." Or would I be like, "Fuck, I'm getting out of here."
I
And
would have
not
been like,
really
girl,
caring.
bye. I'm gonna go get my luggage and I'll see you later.
Pack my bags, head on out. Um, yeah, because I could not knowing what she knew and what then what unfolded is kind of like, well, why? And I like, okay, I don't, and I think that Du Maurier sort of justifies it when we find out the truth about Rebecca.
Right.
I think that's her way of like justifying um, second Mrs. De Winter staying with him, which to me it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So vague. It's so hard.
I, I mean, we didn't spoil this in the discussion, but I feel like we've tiptoed to the edge of like really just like letting people know kind of what
Wink, wink.
goes on. Wink, yeah, wink, wink. So I guess the last question then for the night is, did we think this classic was lit?
It is not lit for me. Nope.
No.
Bad.
Yeah, I would agree.
I felt like okay, so when I finished it and I was like doing my rating on Goodreads, I was like, I kind of want to give this a 2, but then I gave it a 3 because I was like, everyone's gonna hate me. But it just wasn't like it was too problematic for me as a reader.
Yeah. I have to admit, when I got on Goodreads, I gave it a 3. And then I was like, no, I'm lying about, like, not that I'm lying, but like, I was like, no, I'm being too generous right now. Like, I really did not enjoy this as much as I wanted to. This is a 2-star read. Yeah. So for me, this classic was not lit either. And I feel sad about that because I know how many people really loved this book. But I can't say the same. I can't. So, all right. I think that's it. That's all we have tonight, right, Kate?
Yeah. Should we end it with what we're reading now?
Yeah. For like currently or what we're going to read for next month's chat?
What we're currently reading. What are you currently reading? I don't even know.
Literally nothing because like I just finished Rebecca and I'm just like, but I actually think I'm going to start it's not, it's my bookish boyfriend.
Oh yeah, our book club book.
Yes, it's a YA novel, and obviously has to do with Jane Austen, so I'm here for that so wholeheartedly. And it's Mr. Darcy, correct? Am I correct?
Yep.
So I have that, and then I also have a book that I'm probably going to pick up this weekend too. Well, I am because I have a book club on Tuesday for it, and it's by a local author here near where I live, and it's about an older gentleman who's been put in a nursing home by his family, and this is not how he wants to live out the rest of his life. And so he jailbreaks out of the nursing home, gets on
Is
a
it the 100-year-old man that climbed out the window?
No, it's not. It isn't. It's called That Good Night. It's by Richard Probert. And so he gets his friends to rig up a sailboat for him with some cash and stuff, and he just like makes his escape to live out the rest of his days the way he wants to instead of being stuck in this nursing home. So I've probably read like 20 pages of that, and it's really good.
I just finished Calypso. I listened to the audiobook. I was listening to it at my desk at work and literally busting out laughing. People must have thought I was crazy. If you can get your hands on the audiobook, reading by David Sedaris.
It is read by David Sedaris.
Yep. And then I started The Widow of Wall Street.
Oh, yes. Yes, we both got copies, review copies for that. Okay, I see you. Yeah, I gotta pick that one up.
I'm not in love.
No, oh gosh. Oh no.
Maybe.
Oh no.
I'm trying. I just want to read something that. When was the? We're like going on, but what's the last page turner you read?
Oh, you have to ask me, and I don't know off the top of my head. Hold on, let me pull up my Goodreads.
I feel like I haven't read a page turner in a while. Like the last one for me was The Dry, and then I tried to pick up Still Life by Louise Penny.
No, Louise Penny is not a.
And I was like, oh, so I read it. I've like
Brass. I read. It was not a 5-star read for me, but it was a page turner. I finished it fairly quickly. It was a 4-star read for me, so I still really enjoyed it. And then probably the one before that was, oh my God, I feel like I have not read that many great books this year. That's a lot.
I feel like
it's been middling, to be honest. Dumplin' was probably has been my favorite book of the whole entire year so far. No joke.
I love that. And I picked up Pudding, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, it's sitting on the library shelf for me, and I'm just waiting for June to be over when I'm not reading backlist titles. And then I will probably pick up Dumplin'. So yeah, that's kind of where my reading life is at right now. It better pick up because honestly, Rebecca put me in a huge reading slump.
It took 3 weeks to read it just because I hated it so much. Every time I picked it up, I was like, oh, I can't do this, but I have to do this.
It's literally like me trying to get off my butt and work out. I'm just like, no, like my legs are broken. I was like, no, my eyes are broken. I can't read today. So, all right. And do you want to talk about what we're going to read for next month for our next discussion?
Absolutely. So we are going to read the first 3 books in the Nancy Drew series, and I'm so freaking excited because I've never read it. And I feel like everyone loves it, and it's going to be an experience.
I feel like it's going to be nice because obviously, like, the writing isn't going to be as dense. And oh, girl, Nancy Drew for me in, like, 5th and 6th grade was my jam. My freaking jam. Loved it so much. So I'm excited to go and revisit it. I'm happy that this is like not as dense as the one we previously read.
It's going to be so refreshing. But I read the first couple of pages of the first book, A Clock Tower. I don't know. You guys don't judge me. And I didn't realize Nancy Drew was 18 and blonde.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm actually way more excited.
We could also watch the, wasn't there an Emma Roberts adaptation of Nancy Drew? I think there was.
I think we should maybe try to build that into our shows now that when there's just other media available.
Yeah, adaptations of it for sure. Okay, guys. Well, that is everything for tonight. We hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you have feedback, we would love that. This is going to be an ongoing project that Kate and I are working on. We're using live streams right now as a way to just kind of work on the concept and develop it. And if you have any thoughts, let us know. Leave us comments because this will be up on YouTube, or send us a DM over on Litris blog and let us know. Did I forget anything, Kate?
Nope.
Cool then. All right. We're going to go. I'm probably going to go try and read a book, but most likely fall asleep. And what are you going to go do, Kate?
Probably going to watch TV and not think about reading.
Do you know what you're going to watch yet?
No, I don't. I'm in the, I need to find a new comedy show, like a new comedy TV show. I've, binge watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I was just going to say Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I haven't found anything to, fill the hole of that.
Do you not like animated shows? This is totally not Is This Classic Lit discussion. Did you say you like animated shows or no?
Stop this live stream and then just us talk.
Yeah, 20 minutes later, it's still going. Did you say you like animated shows?
I do.
Okay. Do you watch Bob's Burgers already then?
I have not.
Oh. Do you have
Is it on
Hulu?
Netflix? I have Hulu, yeah.
Yeah, all the seasons are on Hulu.
Rich, we're watching Bob's Burgers.
Ben and I do not typically like animated shows, but we like have a special place in our hearts for Bob's Burgers. We're obsessed. Love it more, I would say more than life itself, but I think there's a few other things that I love more than Bob's Burgers, but it's so good. So
Do you love burgers more than Bob's Burgers?
No, not really. Honestly, burgers are not my favorite food. Love a good slice of pizza. Love some lobster and poutine, but I feel mediocre about burgers. So, all right. Well, you go watch Bob's Burgers. I'm probably going to go fall asleep. And thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.